who are these 6 unindicted co-conspirators? Let's put this up on the screen from the Wall Street Journal. They say 6 co-conspirators described in Trump's 2020 election indictment. Descriptions in the document indicate that they are former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani, Trump lawyers John Eastman, Sidney Powell, and Kenneth Chesebro, and former Justice Department official Jeffrey Clark. They, at this point, said a 6th person is described as a political consultant whose identity is unclear. Well, I think we now know who that political consultant actually was. We got some reporting from the New York Times. Go ahead and put A4 up on the screen. Looks like the political consultant was Boris Epstein, based on some emails that he sent back and forth, I think, with Rudy Giuliani and the role that he is known to have played in terms of the fake electors scheme and election conspiracy. So looks like we have all 6 of the unindicted co-conspirators sort of identified in terms of their roles, matches up with what's already been publicly reported. Just to remind you some of the, some of what was going on with these folks at the time. We played this sound recently because Rudy Giuliani is actually being sued for defamation of 2 election workers that he just out and out lied about. And I can say that, flatly as a statement of fact at this point, because even Rudy Giuliani at this point has admitted that he lied about these 2 election workers down in Georgia. Let's take a listen to some of what he was saying about them.
Quite obviously, surreptitiously passing around USB ports as if they're vials of heroin or cocaine. I mean, it's obvious to anyone who's a criminal investigator or prosecutor, they are engaged in surreptitious illegal activity again that day. And that's a week ago, and they're still walking around Georgia lying.
He repeated this crap over and over. They were passing mints back and forth. It was like immediately debunked, and he has now admitted that he was just out and out lying about these regular people who were trying to do their civic duty. Many of you will recall some of the comments and interviews of former Trump lawyer Sidney Powell. This particular instance was at a press conference where she was laying out some fairly wild claims that turned out to be obviously not true about the way that this alleged fraud was all perpetrated on the American public. Let's take a listen to that.
What we are really dealing with here and uncovering more by the day is the massive influence of communist money through Venezuela, Cuba, and likely China in the interference with our elections here in the United States.
So the Venezuela theory of the case, which according to the indictment, according to the indictment, even Trump said sounded crazy.
Venezuelan Chinese dominions, my personal favorite theories of Stop the Steal.
I liked the bamboo ballots. I guess that ties in with the China piece.
Yeah, that's from Arizona. That one's actually quite excellent. There's many schools of Stop the Steal. These are all my personal favorites because they're real. That's what actual voters and maybe Trump didn't believe per se, at least from what we see in the indictment, but he certainly made other people believe it. I can tell you that.
Oh yeah.
I think what comes through in the co-conspirators is there has actually been a lot of legal wrangling, specifically around John Eastman and whether he was responsible or whether he should be criminally charged or disbarred for this scheme. But more troubling, I think the worst one to me was actually Jeffrey Clark, the acting attorney general, around the actual push by Trump and by Jeffrey Clark to try and use the power of the federal government in order to try and take this to a whole other step, which would have been the actual intervention of the DOJ in seizing ballot boxes and in trying to officially spark investigations based though on completely spurious claims. So if you put those together, Epstein and Giuliani, Eastman, and Jeffrey Clark all seem to be the 3 centers of the most nefarious plot. Sidney Powell, I mean, she comes across in the indictment and also at the time as just completely nuts, out of her mind. So much so that even the people in the room were like, what are you talking about? And it's funny because even Mike Pence took a shot at Sidney Powell after the indictment came out. And he's like, yeah, the president surrounded himself by all these crackpot lawyers.
We all know who he's referring to.
Yeah, I think we all know exactly who he was referring to. So the other final thing, we mentioned this in our immediate breakdown, in the indictment press conference by Jack Smith, he said, this will not stop our continuing investigation of individuals. So these are not necessarily the last of the co-conspirators.
Yes.
There are others who may still be. I still think Mike Lindell, look, you know, I don't wish this on Mike Lindell, but I'm like, the man has had his hands in so many things and been funding so many types of things. Him and then the Overstock CEO guy, I forget his Patrick something. Those two, because they were funding different schemes and things like this, they might have put themselves in some serious legal jeopardy.
Yeah, that is true. The other question people are asking is, why isn't Mark Meadows anywhere in this indictment? And, you know, one of the theories about him is he may have already flipped. That might be why he is not present in this indictment. There's also a lot of speculation about why these particular individuals were in there. Perhaps it's put pressure on them to try to cooperate, try to strike some sort of a deal. This is all just speculation, but those are the sorts of tactics that that could be used. You know, with regard to Sidney Powell, her claims were so wild that, and after, I think it was pretty close after that press conference that I just showed you where she was an official part of the team, she got pulled from being an official part of the team. And we know from the indictment that Trump was even saying privately, like, she sounds crazy.
Right.
But she continued to be really central and certainly was publicly making the case, but also was deeply involved in a bunch of the meetings that were happening at the White House. And there's a whole bunch of reporting about how wild things were then, where some of the aides were trying to keep people like Sidney Powell and Mike Lindell or whatever out of the White House, and Trump was having them in anyway, and there were, you know, a bunch of battles over what was going on there. But, you know, these are the folks that the government has at this point identified as sort of central to the plot. So I'm sure they are all in a very uncomfortable position right now based on their actions.
Certainly, that's right.
Hey guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right. We're subscriber funded. We're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.